All right. Hi, everyone. This is a new session where we get to continue developing and working on a schema processing service. This is a part of an effort where we can kind of build an orchestration component that allows us to send a natural query and then process it and bring back the data as if you've written a SQL query, even though if you don't have any previous knowledge necessarily with SQL. This is a standard compliant library, pair programming, and test-driven kind of platform. So you kind of see how we develop these systems and how we kind of put them together in a way that's maintainable and easy to to work with. And I know that Gregory tried a couple of things just to kind of update the um, the documentation on this project, especially the architecture, because that architecture is really your real roadmap. I think he did something pretty cool though. If you look at let's see here. So this is he was able, I think, to add this architecture that you see here. This is you can see the the this is a thing called Mermaid, and Mermaid basically is you write code and it basically writes the diagrams for you. What I like about that is the um, I like the standardization for it. So I'm not making a smaller box and someone else making a bigger box. It's very standardized. It's very systematic and code driven. And I think that's basically what we have here. We have a SQL orchestration service. I think this schema service is what we're working on. This schema service eventually will basically hit the data broker and kind of get the data, basically calculate the schema. Basically, I don't know if we're gonna have a third dependency though, Greg. If you're watching this, um, Kylo, do you remember something like that? I don't know. I don't think we need that third dependency. I think it's two and two, but I could be wrong. Also, up until this very moment, I never heard of this Mermaid Live Editor. I think it's pretty sweet, and I like it. I think it's pretty cool. So if you don't know about Mermaid, go ahead check it out. It's actually a very nifty, neat idea, and it's very GitHub friendly. So whatever you are, like if I go basically and copy this code, I think what Greg did here is pretty smart too. He basically took a kind of a reference to the diagram. I think that's a pretty good idea. But if you're in GitHub in general and you're basically if I just copy this code in here, if I just do this and I say mermaid, I don't think I even need to say that. But if I copy this code and go to preview, it basically renders that. Unable to render diagram not found. What am I missing? There could be a couple of things missing in here. Let's see. I didn't know you could just define colors and all that kind of stuff. But in its essence, basically, you can just kind of copy the code and basically get it to run anywhere on GitHub. So you don't have to copy an image. It scales better. It works better in terms of scaling. I don't know why it didn't render right away. Did I not copy everything? Let's see here. Also, does it know automatically like what to do with? Yeah, I think I have to define and say this is specifically mermaid code. Let's see here. Mermaid. I don't know, maybe it's a different version that the code supports or something like that. Let's see. Greg here says go to actions. Let's see, what did he do in actions? Let's go here. Actions. Mermaid. Oh, is he generating this? That's nice. Setup, checking, restoring NuGet packages, complete job. What did you do, Greg? Copy markdown link. Copy markdown link. Let's see here. Did he make it? I think he made it part of our literally the documentation process, which is pretty neat. I don't know where that's at, Greg, but oh, you mean the markdown in the action itself? Okay, so if I go into workflows.net, no, I don't know where it is, but if you're making it like kind of generated out of the box, I think that's pretty cool. That's very, very cool. Anyway, so if you're not familiar with Mermaid, it's really a neat thing that you can use. I don't know what's the missing piece here to make this um oh, the link in here. Okay, so they're telling me take out this link. Okay, I got the link. Do I just put the link directly into GitHub? Really? Is that how it renders? That's nice. So if I go back into this guy and I just kind of paste this in here and do preview, back to Mermaid Live, see the action. Let's see here, action. Yeah, actions down here. Okay. And then there's download as an SVG, PNG, or copy image to clipboard. But I wanna copy the code, guys, not the actual, like I want the actual code to go in there because sometimes you'll want to reference that website or whatever. Is this how you're doing it? Ah, I see what you did there. So if I copy this link in here, it basically renders the code over. That's pretty cool. But again, like this is referencing an image, I'm assuming, that's live. I was hoping I could just kind of copy the code itself. I don't know what there gotta be something missing in there just to make sure that it actually works. But you can also control the width and the height. Wow, nice. So if I say give me a height of, I don't know, something crazy like, you know, 3 to 10, something like that, and I say copy markdown, does that work? Oh, copy markdown, copy image to clipboard. Yeah, I think now it might be. Yeah, anyway, Mermaid is cool. Go play around with it. It's not the purpose of this stream, but this is certainly very interesting just to see. Yeah, there it is. So it's basically like really wide thing that you can just click on and view, and you can zoom in on. Super useful, super good and super useful. Um, Gregory says Git will not render the code if it is complex, so it's limited basically. Like GitHub is just limited. Like you can do very basic things, but if it's too complex, it doesn't do it. So there must be like versions out there of Mermaid, because as far as I know, this is what I was showing people the other day. If you just do A to B or something like that, I think you have to kind of define a diagram. So Mermaid example, just a simple example of Mermaid would basically be, um, I don't know, something like a sequence diagram like this. And if I copy that, this is what I was thinking. If I just can copy the this like that, Mermaid like that, and you do that, it just copies it over, right? So if it's too complex, it doesn't work. Okay, I see it. I like also the out of the box controls that you get in GitHub, just like that. Super important. Like when I started in the tech industry, I thought to myself that the code is the most important piece, but actually code is just a materialization of a thought process. And your design, if the clearer your design is and your language is with the engineers, the more likely you are to get something out the door. You still need the code, they're inseparable. But if you don't know what decision you're making, you're just writing code, it just doesn't make any sense. There's a name for a group of engineers in the industry that just code and don't think. They call them code monkeys. They just don't think. You're just writing code and you don't understand what you're doing. Don't be a code monkey. That's a bad thing. All right, Kailu, let's go back to, thank you, Griff, for the effort you put into this. I appreciate it. Um, let's go back to the actual to Visual Studio here. I don't know, Kailu, was it my turn or your turn? I think we need to do, there's no validation needed. So let's just go here to view all commits. I think the last thing you did is a pass for the happy path. Okay, I guess it's your turn. So you need to write just a thing for all the dependency validations, and I'll do the dependency, and then you'll do the service, and we'll call it a night. What do you think?
Court.
All right, let's go. All right, here we go. So this is again, just like I said to everyone, this is a pass-through service. And in that service, we're basically just kind of letting things go through to balance the architecture, just like the architecture that I was showing that Gregory put together. So we'll just handle these operations. So we have schema dependency validation. Does it even have a schema validation exception? I don't think so, right? Because there's no input. So you're only handling just the one exception, right? Yeah, you're just running the query and there's nothing else we're doing in there because it's all pre-designed query for the column metadata for the table schema and all that. All right. Yeah, up to someone said markdown link is in Mermaid. Yeah, yeah, I kind of figured. It took me a second there just to process, but yeah, I agree. So I don't know, Kailu, if it's just the one exception, do we need theory data for this? I don't think so, because it's just the one.
Well, you have dependency and then you have service, right?
Yeah, the file is just exceptions. So dot exceptions dot retrieve. Cool. Yeah. Well, you don't need that, right? Why do you need the theory data? It's just the one. Or what were you thinking? So if you're handling dependency validation, it's just the one, right?
So always two, right?
That's the dependency. If you go up to schema service dot exceptions, yeah, at the foundation level. So we're throwing schema dependency validation exception. There's one, right? That's the dependency validation that we're throwing, right? Because it
Okay.
doesn't throw, you get it, right? Okay, cool. I think invalid operation, I don't even know if invalid operation is also a dependency validation because we're basically trying to run SQL code that is invalid, that can't run on that SQL server. So that's why.
So in this case, right, the user didn't do anything, right?
Yeah,
So you're throwing dependency validation exception. So in the controller level, you still throw a 400, even though they didn't do
yeah,
anything wrong.
yeah. It's still a 400 because we localized it. We said it's invalid operation schema exception. So we're telling, this is not working, and here's why. It's invalid operation or something like that. So, but it's still the one exception that we're catching. right? It's like when we do retrieve all, except that retrieve all even doesn't have a dependency validation from its side. Nazir here says, Hassan, I lost you for a while. What are we doing here currently? We are building a schema processing service. If you go back to the architecture, we basically, there's just one missing piece that we discovered last night or 2 days ago that we needed before we built an orchestration service. So while Kylo's doing that, just to kind of give you a high level, Nazir, if you look at the Entity Intelligence project, you'll find that we have a pretty nice architecture here that Gregory put together for us right here. And basically, we are in this part of the process, basically. I wish there was a better way I can I do this? Oh, that's perfect. So this piece right here, right? Schema processing service. So when people send us when the client sends us a natural query, we go hit the database with this schema service first to go and say, give me all the metadata about that service, about this database that you're working with. And then let me give that schema to AI, right? And tell AI build me a query based on that data, based on that kind of metadata about that service. So if you have students table and a student's assignments table, and it has an ID and a name, maybe assignment ID, it will tell AI within that particular framework, build me a query, a SQL query that plays by these particular rules. And then once we have that query, if you follow the cursor here, once we have that query, we can basically go and actually hit the database and run that query, right? Of course, like I, like I said before, there are places where the schema is super huge, so it doesn't fit the restrictions that we have from OpenAI, but we're going to work around that very soon. So I hope that kind of gives you a quick high level view of where we're at. The colors here on the architecture are very important. It shows you what's not started, what's in progress, what's blocked, and what's active or completed. The Summit says, so how do non-technical users create an existing schema? They don't. They don't have to. All they have to do is just kind of give the program a connection to their database, right? And the system will go and retrieve that schema. They don't have to they don't have to know anything about how databases work or anything. It's a way for the users to basically talk to the database instead of without having to learn SQL, right? So a non-technical person, um, well, they won't be able, like, it has to work against an existing database. Like they're not creating a database. That's not the purpose of entity intelligence. Maybe at some point in time, we'll kind of enable people to go build a database and all that, sure. But the purpose of this project particularly is to basically go and say, here's a database that I have. I don't have experience in database administration or database development, but I still want to get some data from this database. This has a lot of useful kind of ways. Like there will be a point in time where instead of a database, you could be talking to a RESTful API, right? So you're basically reading the Swagger document and you're talking to your API So the system is automatically running the queries or the API calls for you instead of you having to learn about it. It has infinite number of applications basically, but SQL is a good start because everybody wants to talk to their database. That's what this program does. It's not even this program, like this is just a library that allows people to do it anywhere they want. But what the next project that will be built on top of this would be like a UI based, like a desktop application that you can just kind of install on your local machine. We'll see how we can do this with Blazor MAUI, so you can run it anywhere you want, on a Mac or a Linux or a Windows machine, and then basically, kind of allow you to kind of have that kind of nice interaction. I have to say though, like some technical expertise might be inevitable, especially if you're talking to a database that is not local. Like if you're talking to Azure, you have to know how to whitelist your own IP address. Otherwise, it's not going to let you just talk to a database off the bat. It's like a security measure that's default now to any Azure-based system. I don't know if it's the same thing in AWS. It could be something different, but that's definitely the one hurdle that I see that people might run into when they try to use the Entity Intelligence UI component. We can even develop it and deploy it as a command line tool. So you basically install the .NET command line and you basically just set up the configurations and now you're talking to your database in the command line. It's pretty wild. It's a good project. But as I usually say, like good work, good projects take time, right? It takes testing, it takes coordination with a team. But once it's out there, it's out there. Like Brian Parker likes to say, we like to build silent software. Once it's done, it's done. We forget about it. It's there. Just like this OpenAI library, right? Once it's developed, it's developed. There's nothing else we do there. We don't have to go back and fix things. Maybe add features, but we don't have to fix things necessarily. All right, is that your failing test, Kay? For me? Let's do
Yeah.
it. All right, cool. Wait, did it actually fail? Oh, you changed the name, so that's why it's okay. Let's do that. Let's just assume it fails. Right, okay. So
Yeah, the famous assumption.
all right, my turn. Let's take this. I'll just sync up the data. For people who are seeing this for the first time, this is pair programming, right? You don't have to do the work on your own. You get to work with someone who plays by the exact same rules you do. Less fights and more code is a good sign of this. Kylo and I don't have to talk about styles or how we implement this piece or anything like that. We just get to it. We just get to it and get it done. All right, so you need a try catch from me then. So that means I need a partial class in here, and this partial class will be .exceptions.cs, right? Why it's not nesting standard web, there you go, .exceptions. And then I want to partialize this guy. We don't need to implement or inherit on the partial level, right? And so here is, so this is a value task that returns a schema, right? And I'm saying returning schema function, and this is a func. Sorry, it's a delegate. There you go. And then private async value task schema, try catch, returning schema function. There's your try catch, and then this is awaiting returning a schema function. There you go. And then what's the exception that we're trying to catch? That's the exception that Kailu is kind of throwing in his tests. So that would be the schema dependency validation exception, right? It has some inner exception that we care about. So that's this guy. So that's that. And then I'm basically going and saying, okay, I don't need to localize this because we're at the processing level. But what I can do is to create a new schema processing dependency validation exception, right? And then I'm taking that schema validation exception dot inner exception as exception, just like that. And now I want to use this. So I'm going to go here and say, this is try catch. Here's async. And I'm basically closing the gap in here and then taking away this async. There you go, something like that. Now, let's see here. Why is this guy? Oh yeah, because it needs to be partialized, right? Now, if I'm not mistaken, so this is Visual Studio is going and saying, hey, you can simplify this by removing that expression like that, right? What's the problem with this, Kylo? Do you see a problem with this? You see what Visual Studio
It
just
got
recommended?
it got rid of the async await.
Yeah, it just passed in. The only problem with this, it doesn't resolve, right? Which means that in some cases, I'll talk a little bit more in detail about this, but this is not the way that like taking away this is not the direction we normally take. And I'll tell you in a second why. You want to resolve immediately to propagate the exception at this level, not upstream when it's too late to kind of process that. But I'll dig into that a little bit more in a second. Let's just run this first. And it's not happy. Why is that? Because, oh, the message. Oh, the message must be different. Data. Oh, you said data in
Yeah,
here.
schema.
Schema. Okay, let's do this again. You know, I've made a lot of good decisions about the standard, but I must tell you, this whole explicitly saying the actual message is one of my favorite because it catches any inconsistencies in our messaging. I like it. So this is a pass. Okay, is it my turn? It's my turn now. I need to now talk about the dependency exceptions, right? Which is like your downstream service is producing two different types of exceptions. Like we're calling this schema service. And this schema service is throwing two different kinds of exceptions, right? It's going and saying, here is your, you have a schema, failed schema dependency exception and failed schema service exception. So both of these are dependency and service. Because it's service on the dependency, it becomes a dependency exception itself, right? So I need these two guys in here. I need to take both of these exceptions and handle them in the upstream service. How do you handle multiple exceptions? You basically write in private static, you write a theory data that has exception, and you just call this schema dependency exceptions, right? And we can create some inner exception in here. Well, it's not some, it's inner exception because we actually care about this. So new exception like that, and you're returning a new theory data like this with new, what are the things we copied? If you do Windows V on your keyboard, it will get you the exceptions that you copied, just like that. So this is inner exception like that. And also we have schema dependency exception with also inner exception, just like that. Okay, so this is schema dependency exceptions because we're handling multiple. Now I just need to go write a test I'll steal Kailu's test. I'll steal all his stuff like that. Except that instead of a fact, I'm saying theory. And then I'm passing in that method that has all this nice detail, which is the schema dependency exceptions. That's the method that I just created, right? It's mad because this guy's supposed to be public. Is that right? Or, oh, name off, that's why. Okay, so let me go back here. So it's name of, it works really weird. I'm pretty sure it has some reflection going on or something like that. Okay, so now there's this guy, should throw dependency exception, not dependency validation. And it should take in dependency, let's call it schema, dependency exception, like that. Right, now why is this guy complaining? It's saying member derivative public members, our change visibility. Yeah, it has to be public, that's right. I'm telling you, it's using reflection somehow. Yeah, there you go. Okay. So if that's the case, then I don't need this inner exception anymore. I need a schema dependency exception. Schema processing dependency exception. So this will be schema processing. Find whatever there is the word validation and just get rid of it. And that basically takes care of half of the work that I have to do for this. Right? Now I just need to create an exception like that. So let me go up to the models area under processing. This is under schemas, schema processing dependency exception. There you go. And that guy inherits from exception. He's a constructor. This guy will take in exception as an inner exception. Here's the base message schema dependency error occurred, contact support, and we're passing in that inner exception. So that's one, right? But then with this new standard, we're basically saying we also want to allow passing in the messages. So here's a string message. That's what makes our test much more reliable, because we know exactly explicitly bring it up to the attention to the developers that are working on that particular exception handling test. So here's this guy. That's added. Let's go back to our tests here. Half of this should be okay. Good. And then this is my schema dependency. I actually need the inner as exception, right? And this schema dependency error occurred validation. Fix errors, contact support instead. Right, and just to kind of double check, I'm looking at the message here. Schema dependency error occurred. You never want to mention the hierarchy of the service that you're running from. Okay, let's just go through this one more time. So schema processing dependency exception, this is my expected. It should have the inner of whatever that exception is. So that's the exception that is being thrown. And then you run, you test, you validate exceptions are right, and then you basically verify no other calls. That looks like a good test to me. And it should fail. Let's do this. Here's a failing test. You want to verify, you want to always say, okay, is the expected matching, is this the right failure, right? If it's not, then we have to fix it, okay? So here's a fail. Kailu, do you want to take this?
Okay.
Go for it. It's pushing. All right, pushed. All right, it's all you now. And for people who are seeing this style for the first time, that's what we call the ping pong, right? You know, he's writing a failing test, I'm making it pass. I'm writing a failing test, he's making it pass. So it's back and forth like that. Okay, so Kailu is catching the two exceptions that come out of that dependency that we're calling, and he's basically putting them both under a schema processing dependency exception. Cool. Let's see what that looks like. Perfect. Some folks were talking to me the other day about, how long it really takes, for you to kind of get comfortable with test-driven development in that particular manner. And what I basically tell people is it's like practice every day, right? You do it every day, it becomes second nature. You're not even thinking about the code anymore, but rather what you're trying to achieve from that code. It takes focus, takes a lot of hard work at the beginning, but once you catch up that and then the rhythm changes every now and then because like I said the standard is always in draft mode, so things change all the time, but it's not massive changes that changes completely the way you do things. It's much simpler and easier than that. It's tiny changes here and there, as long as it's a minor change. If you see Gregory pumping up the version of the standard into a major release, know that this is a whole new mindset that we're going into. But if it's minor changes here and there, it's probably okay, right? It's probably okay. Azir says, Hassan, why does it seem to me that you people focus more than anything on tests? Please acknowledge me. Yeah, tests is the most important part of your software. If you don't, it's test driven. So you start with the test. Your test is the documentation. Your test is the assurance that your application is in good format, in good shape. If you're building something super critical, like a medical device or a medical system, and you don't have tests, you could hurt people. You could cause someone to severe harm. So what's the most important part about software? Testing software. You know, How do you think of all the possible exceptions that can happen? Well, we have a catch-all, right? So there's the ones that, like categorically, up to Summit says, how do you think about all these possible exceptions? And what I basically do is that the standard breaks them into three, right? There is a validation and a dependency and a service exception, right? So you start digging into each bucket, but even if you don't catch one of these, you always have the catch-all. The catch-all is the one that basically says service exception. Everything else that I haven't thought about, catch it, and localize it and send it upstream. Every now and then we look at the logs and we see new exceptions that we haven't been aware of. They get falsely reported as a dependency or a service exception. But as you're learning about your system and you're seeing new issues going on, you start kind of modifying the code to properly report for these errors. I remember there are points in time where we had to write systems that had probably 15, 20 exceptions, just way too many errors coming out of the dependency, which is a good thing. You want to be as granular as possible when it means that you're going to take a different action. When you're building a library, you don't know what the action is because you're building a library that people are going to build on top of. So you want to be a little bit more precise and specific about all the errors that come out of your system. Kailu called this failed schema service error occurred in the message line 98. Yeah, so you see Abdul Samad, this last test that Kailu is writing, this test mainly focuses on the that catch-all, the catch-all, which is anything else that we haven't accounted for. We want to catch all these exceptions, under something, whatever that thing may be. we need to kind of account for it somehow. There you go. Yeah, so this is memory leakage, index outside of the array, whatever thing that happens that we don't know about, that would be this test. And that would be the final test. If you're working on the service exception test in the natural order of things, that's the last thing that we really care about. All right, Kailu, is it my turn?
Yup.
All right, my turn. So let me take this, right, and let me run the tests. See the style of this, like you always run the tests, make sure it fails. You know, you're already running all the tests in your platform so many different times to the point where if there's a flaky test here and there, you will catch it. You will definitely catch it.
Do a
There you
pull
go.
again.
Yep,
Yeah.
just did. All right, so here's failed schema, service exception. Cool, cool, cool. Let me go into the implementation for this guy. Well, not this one. The implementation for this guy. Here's a try catch. I'm catching the generic exception, right? So that's this guy. And I'm basically reporting a var failed schema service exception, new failed schema service, failed schema service, failed schema processing service exception, right? There you go. And that takes that. And then we have a schema processing service exception that will take this guy as an inner. And that takes care of our service exception. There you go. This is done. Take that guy, put it as a pass. Let's see here. All right. So okay, so this is all good. Let me run all these. This is all good. So now the service is done. This is a service, right? So this is the entire implementation of a piece. See how we basically handle, this is one of the easy ones too, except for the fact that it has a some extra dependency validation error. Other than that, it's all good. So I'll put the screen back on our so you see all these pushes. So you can see here, this is truly test driven because again, you see red, green, red, green, red, green, and then red, and this will be green. So you can literally see that we are intentionally failing and passing in that particular order, and the commit history is actually reflective of that. All right, we have a couple of minutes here before we wrap up. So Nazir says, Hassan, I love the concept SPAL. That's standardized provider abstraction. And I am acknowledge people in my company about this, and they also like it. Even I introduced it, the application architect, they appreciate me. Perfect. I like that people like SPAL. For people who don't know what SPAL is, it's, abstract the provider, switch over from SQL to MySQL to RDS, whatever, and you shouldn't change anything in your application, including the exceptions, including the operations. Of course, it poses its own challenges. It's a fancy idea, but it poses its own challenges. It's part of the tri-nature theory about abstraction. So there's language abstraction, provider abstraction, and then framework abstraction. If the standard community achieves these three, we are just at a whole new level in terms of software engineering. But we need to wrap up projects for, like a project like this, we need to wrap it up, and then we start thinking about, the next thing that we need to do. All right, I'm gonna put this PR as ready for review. I'll let the build run. Um, Gregory, if you want to take a look and see anything that needs to be cleaned up in this BR, run code cleanup, or maybe we renamed something, I'll leave it up to your review to kind of do the sign off. It's always a good practice to let someone else take a look at your code and give you like their 2 cents about the project. But other than that, that that would be a conclusion of our session tonight. I appreciate all of those who participated. Thank you, Kay. Thank you, everyone. Have a good night. Take care.